If you've ever felt anxious after reading your horoscope or watching astrology content, you're not alone. It's like getting a taste of what's to come, but not the full bite. So you're left wondering how it'll all manifest. And often that's not in an excited way, but in a nervous, scary, edge of your seat kind of way. But it's not the astrology that's making you anxious. It's the way you're consuming the content. This is something that I've experienced personally as a professional astrologer, and I know it's something many of us deal with. So today I want to talk about why astrology can feel so overwhelming and be so anxiety inducing, but more importantly, how to shift the way you engage with it so that it actually helps you stay grounded instead of contributing to the spiral. So let me tell you what happened to me. I've been a professional astrologer since 2021, and in 2024 I was lucky enough to get a co-hosting gig with Nightlight Astrology doing the monthly horoscopes. And in the middle of doing that, I started feeling really anxious about the astrology of the moment. I found it difficult to do the research I needed to do to talk about the transits because it was becoming overwhelming to me to think about them. And at first I thought that the problem was me because I do have anxiety, and I thought that maybe just that time in my life and being in a more public role as an astrologer was starting to affect me on a deeper level. Maybe I needed a break. So I took a little bit of a break. I stepped back from astrology at the end of 2025, and that led me to an interesting discovery. When I was looking at the astrology of the moment just for myself, I didn't feel any of the anxiety I felt when I was doing research for horoscopes. That helped me discover the real problem was framing and orientation, both of the content I was consuming and my own orientation as a consumer of that content. Sometimes, maybe even oftentimes, on the scrolling social media apps, we see astrology content that's framed a lot like the 90s tabloids that you and I, or maybe not you, I don't know, but some of us remember from the checkout lane at the grocery store, where every headline is as shocking as possible. And I get it. You're trying to stop the scroll. You're trying to get people's attention. So we have to hit them with something that's really catchy or really like, oh shit, what's that mean? But obviously that is activating, and seeing that over and over again, especially on a platform where you're already kind of stressed out just by the nature of scrolling and all of that information you're taking in, we amplify that with shocking headlines when we're talking about astrology. But it's more than just what we're consuming on the apps. It's also happening when we're taking in valid, grounded, really useful astrology content as well. Because obviously when I was doing research for horoscopes on Nightlight, I wasn't just looking on TikTok and Instagram. I was reading research and scholarship from really highly esteemed astrologers who know what they're doing and are really doing everything they can do to provide a clear, neutral, grounded take on what's happening. However, almost every astrologer I know that talks about the astrology of the moment, including the ones I know and love, are presenting it in a way that is meant to be purely predictive. In other words, they're not presenting it as a spiritual invitation to show up on purpose. That might seem like a small distinction, but to me, this is everything. Because if you're presenting the astrology of the moment from the place of what could happen or what might show up, without the added element of how do you want to show up in that context? What's the spiritual invitation for you? How are you being asked to move through this moment? And how do you choose to move through this moment given this information? Without that, you're just listening to somebody telling you what's going to happen. And the nature of horoscopes and forecast astrology is it's vague. We have a general sense of what might happen, but we can't get that specific, or rather, we can't get specific enough to satisfy us. Because when we approach astrology content from the lens of, I want to know what's going to happen, there's probably a part of us that really wants control. And look, we all do. It's a human thing because to feel out of control is inherently scary. We want control because we want to feel like we've got a handle, like we have a say in what's going to happen. But when you listen to astrology content from a purely predictive place, you are listening to someone tell you, here is what's going to happen. And it's easy to forget that you have free will in that. So that's how, instead of astrology being the incredibly empowering spiritual tool that it is, we can turn astrology into our weekly panic attack. And this is even a problem when the astrology is really good, quote unquote, because you get your hopes up. And when maybe it doesn't quite work out the way you thought it would, you feel like you did something wrong. So from every which way, listening to astrology only for its predictive value is disempowering. We need to add that element of intentionality. How do you choose to show up given the fact that? And not every astrologer needs to offer that, but I do think we as consumers need to remember that. If our astrology practice ends when we push stop on the podcast or the YouTube video or whatever, then we are setting ourselves up for that kind of anxiety. Or we've just wasted 30 to 50 minutes, however long we spent listening to the information, because we didn't give ourselves an opportunity to integrate it. We just heard it and let it go. I realize this might not be a popular take. I think a lot of people really respect the fact that astrology is an oracle and they want it to be purely predictive. And I'm not here to tell you what to do. But if you're watching this, I think you might resonate with the struggle of astrological anxiety. And I'm trying to remind you that this can be the most empowering spiritual practice you have, because it gives you the information you need, just enough information, the context of the situation, so that you can choose how you want to show up more intentionally than you otherwise would. For example, I did not know my Saturn return was happening until it was almost over, because I wasn't into astrology yet. Once I had that information, I can't tell you the relief that brought me, because I understood why things had been so fucking hard for the last year and a half. This is the power of knowledge. Now, you can cross the line because you're being driven by certainty and a need for control. Like, if I would have known my Saturn return was coming, I'm sure I would have been getting a ton of readings and listening to all of the podcasts and reading all of the books. But there does come a time when you can have too much information. And it's not even that you have too much information, it's that you are looking for certainty and you're not going to get it. You simply have to live through the experience and see what happens. So I think that changing our orientation from passive consumers of information to active participants and co-creators with the universe not only empowers us, but it deepens our self-trust. It helps us understand that no matter what, we're going to get through it. This is a moment in time, and we're listening to this information to help us choose how we want to respond. And when we live through those moments over and over again of being intentional and choosing to respond, we start to learn that we can count on ourselves, that you know what? I have a great relationship with myself. I have my own back. And then suddenly our entire lives change. This is how powerful an intentional astrology practice can be. So it occurred to me that the real problem was never astrology. It was being unintentional about how I wanted to use this incredible spiritual tool. I realized I personally needed a different way to engage with astrology, one that would actually help me instead of stressing me out. And that forced me to ask the question, what is astrology actually supposed to help me do? For thousands of years, astrology has been an oracle, a tool for prediction, for understanding the fate and fortune that we are to experience. I don't think that's the best use for it in this day and age. And I do think that there are other ways to use this tool. I'm certain many people would disagree with me on that. I don't think this is a popular opinion. But for me, astrology is not a crystal ball, it's not a warning system, and it's not a fortune cookie. It is meant to help you be more present, mindful, and intentional. It is a true spiritual tool in the sense that it grounds you in the present moment and it gives you just enough awareness of what's going on to move through it intentionally. Astrology is a tool for orientation. It tells you what time it is energetically and spiritually. It gives you context so that you can make choices from a more informed and grounded place. That's when it becomes so powerful. And look, I definitely get it. I know we come to our horoscopes and we come to the forecast because we just want to know what's going to happen. But I think there's something much deeper you can get from your astrology practice if you allow it to be an invitation to engage with whatever is coming instead of a warning system of what landmines you're going to have to avoid in the coming week or month. It's not just anxiety reducing to shift your relationship with astrology like this, it's also very empowering because you start to see that no matter what happens, you are in charge. No matter how wild things get, you get to decide how you want to show up. And this matters so much right now. We're in between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. We're in this liminal in-between season. Already, astrology aside, this is a tender time. There's a lot happening astrologically too. So if you're feeling heavy, confused, or like something is dissolving, that tracks. Something is dissolving. That's what this season of the year is for, and that's what the astrology of this moment is reinforcing as well. This is a season where we're being called to release those things that we've outgrown, and that certainly requires your presence and awareness of how you are responding to the moment. When we have such major astrological events happening, it's so tempting to mainline astrology content, to listen to every famous astrologer's hot take on what this is going to bring and how it might show up. And I want to say there's nothing wrong with information and being informed, but be careful not to take it too far, because there is a line, in my opinion, that you can cross where you go from being well informed to being overwhelmed with information. That is not what you need right now. You need orientation. You need to know where you are right now and what this present moment is asking of you. And that's true not just now, but always. So now, if you're ready to transform your astrology practice to something more grounded and intentional, I want to share with you the 3-step practice that I personally use when I'm engaging with astrology. Step 1, what is happening? Look at the astrology. What transits are active? What's the energy of the moment? Keep it simple. You don't need 47 interpretations. Truly, the easiest thing to do is to look at a list of transits. Now, if you're new to astrology, this make it a little more challenging because you may not understand what all the symbols are. I have a free resource that can help you just quickly learn these things that you can get in the show notes here. But I also recommend not doing too much at once. So I wouldn't try to look at a full year. I maybe wouldn't even look at a full month. I personally like small bits of time, but it totally depends on you. Now, you can look at the general astrological weather, and you can also look at your personal transits, and feel free to choose focused transits. You don't have to think about every single transit that is occurring, especially if you use modern aspects. There's simply too much to focus on. So whittle your focus down to those most important transits. One way to do this that I find really accessible is to just track lunar transits. Now, you might be thinking, doesn't the moon make a shitload of transits? Yes, it does, but it gives you a single focus as you're looking at the astrology of the week, the month, whatever. The moon is the luminary, the celestial body that translates all of the other planets into material experience. So I think that lunar transits are often like the most obvious in our everyday lives. They're very quick. So that serves a dual purpose of helping you see how astrology is playing out in real time, grounding you in the fact that nothing is forever. So even the scariest looking transit is not going to be there for all time. It'll happen and then it'll be done. And it also helps you learn how the archetypes manifest in real time. Once you have your list of focused transits, you're going to reflect on how it's showing up for you. If you're doing this for, let's say, on a Sunday, and you're doing this for the week ahead, you could think about how it might show up. You might be thinking, isn't that just predictive astrology? Yes, but we're going to take it a step further, so stay with me. You're going to think about which house in your birth chart the astrology will be active in. So as of recording this, there's a bunch of planets in Aquarius, and we just came off of a full moon in Leo. So for me, that's my 5th and 11th house axis. I could look at that big list of transits and say, wow, there's a lot going on, but it's all clustered in my 5th and 11th houses. So I'm going to really focus on how those topics are showing up in my life right now. So that's another way to make it a little more simple, is to group the transits transits rather than try to think about them all at once. Another way to approach this so that you're not doing any kind of prediction is to simply make it reflective. So on that Sunday, instead of thinking of the transits that are coming up, you reflect on the transits that have just happened. That way, there's absolutely no anxiety inducing anything because you're thinking about stuff that's already happened. From there, step 3 is saying, what choice do I want to make from here? This is where your agency comes in. You start to take back your power from what I'm guessing might have been for you a very disempowering astrology practice. I know for me it's been that way. I would religiously listen to a weekly forecast or a monthly forecast. I would think about or ruminate about how it was going to show up for me, and then I would forget about it, and it would be pointless, truthfully. It wasn't helping me. So whether you're doing the more reflective approach or the more predictive approach, you still get to decide how you want to move forward. Let's say you've just reflected on the astrology of last week and you're at step 3. Well, what choice do I want to make from here? You can simply decide how you want to proceed with intentionality without astrology in mind. Astrology at that point has just become the mechanism that helped you reflect on what has happened. But if you're taking that more predictive angle where it's Sunday and you're reflecting on the astrology of the week ahead, you've thought about how it might manifest for you, what you're anticipating, you still get to decide, what choice do I want to make? How do I want to show up? If I know that there's going to be a Leo full moon, and Leo's my 11th house, and I've got all these planets in my 5th house right now opposing this full moon, and I've got plans to go out and do stuff this weekend, how do I want to show up? Knowing that I might be feeling a little hectic. There might be stuff going on with my kids because I've got a pile up of planets in my 5th house. How do I want to show up this week with intentionality? Knowing it's a full moon, maybe I'm going to need a little more breaks than usual because the energy's kind of high. Knowing that there might be something going on with the children in my life or with my creative life, maybe I want to carve more time for family time or more time for my creative practice as much as possible. Maybe I want to sit in reflection on my creative practice. Maybe I want to do some art. So regardless of whether you approach it from the purely reflective angle or the more predictive angle, you still get to choose how you want to show up and the extent to which you allow astrology to inform that decision. It can be 0%. I truly think astrology is incredibly powerful just as a reflective tool, but you could also use it in its traditional predictive application to set really powerful intentions. And then instead of just hearing the transits and forgetting about them as you move about your week, you come back to them as you come back to your intentions. Oh, I didn't really need that intention around taking more breaks because I'm actually feeling super energized. And then the reflection comes up, right? You get to sit in reflection with that and deepen your understanding of this thing that I thought was going to be intense and a little scary was actually super productive and fun. You start to rewrite your own narratives. You start to dismantle your own anxiety. So that's it. That's the practice. It's really simple, but it is completely different than passively consuming astrology content and wondering what's going to happen to you, because it redirects you and it puts you in charge of your own life. Which, by the way, astrology is never meant to take away your free will. Of course, it shows us where fated events can happen, and it does show us what's happening externally in the context and the environment of our lives, but that doesn't mean we have no choice about how we respond. When we bring back that component of choice and intentionality, we completely transform astrology from something that can really limit us and make us afraid to something that can truly empower us to be the people we really want to be. Now, if you want a setup that can help you with this process, my Cosmic Witch Astrology Almanac was designed exactly for this practice. It is a Notion dashboard of all of the astrology of 2026 with tutorials for importing your own personal transits, views that help you look just at what you need to see, and it doubles as a journal. So you can open every single transit and type away in its own page like a Google Doc, and it becomes your deepest source of astrological enrichment and grounding as well. It's designed to support exactly what we talked about today: grounded orientation and intentional reflection. More than anything, here's what I want you to take away from this. Astrology is not the problem. Information overwhelm is. If you're dealing with anxiety that seems to come from your astrology practice, I can almost guarantee astrology is not the problem. It's likely information overload and perhaps your subconscious orientation to astrology, not intentionally using it as the reflective tool that I think it can truly be. You don't need more astrology content. You need to relate to astrology on a personal level and allow it to help you see what this moment is here to give you. So I invite you to get the almanac if that feels supportive for you, to get oriented, and to remember that you are always in charge, not just of how you show up, but how you respond no matter what's happening around you. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next time.